Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. It is another beautiful day here in Alberta, Canada. I don't know where you're tuning in from, but welcome on this Monday. Let me know where you're coming from. We are back to continue our reading on the My Father Knew the Secret book. We are continuing to read from page 34 near the top. I'm not going to waste a lot of time because that's just simply what we're doing. And if you have the book, read along. If you are in a country that doesn't have access to this book, I don't know. I don't see why not nowadays. But if you do not have access to this book, or you just simply don't have the time to read it, and you just want someone to read it to you, today's your lucky day. So I'm going to jump right in on page 34. I'm going to put my timer on so I stay on track and I don't go over 30 minutes, because we're going to come back on Wednesday and then the following Monday, Wednesday until we are done this amazing book. There's tons to learn from it. So I would really encourage you to have a notebook and a pen close by and take notes, because there's going to be so much to learn. And with that, I'm going to hit start on my timer, and we're going to go from top of page 34. Says, listen to your inner voice. My father is a direct link to the modern science of success that is so popular today. He was studying and teaching personal growth long before it was popular, driven by a desire to help people understand and tap in to the potential of their mind in order to live a life of prosperity, rewarding relationships, and greater awareness of what lies within them and around them. In his final days, when my father was so desperately wanted me to understand that he would always be with me, I promised him I understood. He said I should continue to ask him questions as if we were having a conversation, and that to understand the answer, I would need to get into a quiet place and calm my mind, and that in this relaxed state I would know. I would feel the answer, and likely call it my intuition. He told me to allow that to guide me. Currently, I am going through a business situation that feels wrong. My intuition is screaming at me. In the past, I may have passed that off as nonsense or fear. Not anymore. This last lesson from my father, the one he worked so hard to make sure that I understood, is likely the most important. I will listen to that inner voice and follow it. I choose to let that inner voice represent my father speaking to me. That's cool that he does that. Whether it is or not, it's irrelevant. I know that if I follow my heart and pay attention, this awareness will always guide me in the right direction. Now, my advice to you is to do the same. Always seek out and listen to your inner voice, no matter what is happening in or around you. If you can relax, quiet your mind, and start asking questions, the answers will come. Let that voice speak with great tenderness. Sometimes those answers might not be convenient. However, if we pay attention and let it guide us from a place of inner peace, I firmly believe we will be on track for a life with more meaning and less regret. Know as I do that Bob Proctor's wisdom is always here with us. Do your part and commit to a life of curiosity and learning. Question the way you reflexively do things. Our reactions and responses are likely our paradigms that are part of our belief system, which may be an assumed truth. So get curious and question, and always choose growth. Page 36, the last page. Quote, personal development has no finish line, end quote, Bob Proctor. I know that my father took that phrase to heart. He studied right up to the week of his passing. He was forever reading and sharing ideas. He never thought he knew it all. He always felt there was still so much to discover and learn. Near the end of his life, I would sit and I'd read to him. Sometimes when I thought he was asleep, he would suddenly say, "Read that again." My father's desire for growth indeed had no finish line, and more than anything, he wanted to pass on that knowledge. He wanted everyone to understand that a lifelong thirst and commitment to growth through study and understanding is the key to expanding our mind, is the path to discovering our untapped potential. I remember him saying something from stage that got a good laugh, but also showed how important he thought this was and how much he wanted you to understand it. He said, "If I could take all this information, bottle it up in a shot, and inject you in the ass with it, I would." That desire and passion were with him right to the end. I remember him saying that from stage. Page 38. When I go into his studio now, the book in his book holder is The Hidden Power by Thomas Troward, which is open to the 2 pages he was studying. Many of the words are highlighted in yellow. The Hidden Power was written long ago, so the writing is less current than today's ideas. However, each page has a valuable lesson and is as relevant as ever. I have no idea how long my father was on those 2 pages, but it wasn't unusual for him to study the same page for months. He always took the time to make sure he fully understood the concept. That is a form of learning that takes extraordinary patience and persistence. But because he studied this way, he had a depth of knowledge and understanding that few have. When Dad resonated with an author, he would incorporate what he was studying until it became a part of his new paradigm. He was still doing this at the age of 87. Learning excited him. His curiosity was insatiable. That is a big part of what made him different and why he had such a large following. You could feel his passion, and when he taught, he communicated in a way that made the concepts easy to understand. It didn't matter where you lived, what culture you came from, what language you spoke. Bob Proctor, like no other, got you excited about your life and the possibilities for you. Okay, page 39 is consideration. So these things you can consider and you could jot in your notebook if you like. Number 1, if you were to model Bob Proctor's way of life and philosophy about daily study, how much could you achieve during the rest of your lifetime here on Earth? Number 2, my father used to highlight that in order to succeed, one must ask themselves these questions. Am I willing? And am I able? If you can answer yes to those 2 questions, it's not out of the book. You're sailing. If you're willing and you're able, nothing can stop you. Number 3 here, the question, are you willing and able to commit to daily study? Even just reading a paragraph a day adds up over a lifetime. Even meeting up with me here, Mondays and Wednesdays, until we go through this amazing book, that is just a commitment that's kind of outside of your normal habits and habits are your paradigms. So you're stepping in the right direction as far as studying and learning. There's a young Bob. Isn't that awesome? We are moving on to page 42, chapter 2, Attraction. The movie that changed everything. Quote, the universe wants us to have an abundant life, and it is always supporting us in making this a reality. Unquote. Bob Proctor. Bob Proctor expected big things would happen for him. When I say big, I mean something that would shift his business in a way that would forever change the way he did things and help him to reach and impact more people than he ever had. It was because Dad studied every day that he expected something big to happen. It was an inner knowing developed because of the knowledge he had acquired and applied since he was given a copy of Think and Grow Rich for the very first time on October 21st, 1961. I was born in December of that same year. This journey has been my entire life. It was 2005 when something very big indeed arrived. Very big indeed arrived. It was the opportunity to be in a movie titled The Secret. I'm sure everybody's heard of that who's watching. By this time, Dad had been in the personal and professional development space for 45 years. He had been traveling, giving seminars, and teaching in boardrooms all over the world. And he'd already spent years working his tail off in an effort to reach more people and change more lives. And for many of those years, he was gone much more than he was home. There were even years when he was flying from Toronto to Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, every 3 weeks to work with the Malaysian Airlines Group. Being in the personal and professional development realm for this long, Dad was a walking example of the material he taught. But it was the secret that propelled Bob Proctor and his message to millions of people and onto a worldwide stage seemingly overnight. This opportunity, its massive popularity, and how it came about changed everything for Dad. What I love about this story is that the movie is based on the law of attraction. And for me, there is no better example of the law of attraction than how my father came to be in that movie. It was in the spring of 2005. Dad was in an airport between flights and called his longtime friend and executive assistant, Gina Hayden. Gina, at the time, had worked closely with Dad for 20 years. They often spoke multiple times a day. He called Gina because his voicemail was full of messages and he needed her help in clearing them. One voice message specifically was broken up and really difficult to understand. He thought it was a number from Australia and that it might have been from someone named Glenda. It was about a movie. After cleaning Dad's voicemails, Gina called him back to discuss an interesting conversation she had just had with a woman named Glenda from Australia. Glenda is the sister of Rhonda Byrne, who is the creator of The Secret. Glenda told Gina that a film crew from Australia was shooting a movie and that they would like to have Bob Proctor in it. She said the crew planned to return to Australia in a few weeks, but were shooting in Aspen, Colorado in the following weekend and had been trying to reach Bob Proctor for over a month. A seminar in Aspen the very same weekend. So all he would have to do was walk from one hotel and across the road to the other. So Rhonda's team added Bob Proctor to their filming lineup, and Dad added the time to his itinerary. When Dad arrived in Aspen and sat down to meet the film crew for the very first time, he realized they had done their research and knew he had been in this business for a long time. The movie, to be based on the Little Green Book, which happened to be The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. Well, Dad knew this book intimately. The Science of Getting Rich, along with many other books, had been his daily study rotation for over 40 years. So he knew it inside and out and often taught many on the principles of Wattles that Wattles wrote about. In fact, this was the book that had been introduced to him by one of his mentors, Lloyd Conant. The crew gave him a brief overview of what they were aiming for. Dad did not enjoy working with teleprompters, so he instead had them ask him questions. After he'd answered all their questions, he asked if he could record something for them, unscripted. He suggested they could use it or not. It was up to them. Then he spoke from the heart about everything he had studied and taught for the prior 45 years. If you'd ever seen Bob Proctor on stage, you know how information flows to and through him. And that is precisely what happened that afternoon in the hotel room in Aspen, Colorado. He recorded a 20-minute piece on the law of attraction in one take. It was flawless. The crew was blown away. They loved the additional footage so much that they offered it as a bonus segment on the DVD. My father was back in his room across the street in just over an hour. Months later, when Rhonda's team had finished editing The Secret, Rhonda sent a DVD of the movie to Toronto. That DVD sat on the counter in Dad and Linda's house for weeks until finally Dad said to Linda, "We really should watch this." When they finished watching it, Dad knew immediately that this was the movie that would impact millions of people. He turned to Linda and said, "This is going to be bigger than any of us can imagine." And he was right. Another interesting piece of this story is that Rhonda did not have funds to pay the people who agreed to be in the movie. Yet, in true Bob Proctor fashion, he didn't care about that. What he wanted was to get his message out to a larger audience. Other teachers were asked to be in The Secret but declined when they learned they wouldn't be compensated for their time. But Dad lived his life following universal law and understood the law of cause and effect. He knew that what you send out comes back. He lived focused on the cause and let the effect show up. I'm going to repeat that line, and I hope you write it down. It is of utmost importance in your life, starting now. He focused on the cause and let the effect show up. Okay? Think about it. If you have questions, send me a message. Very powerful line. Dad didn't get paid for that hour in Aspen, but he sure got rewarded. Bob Proctor stood out in that movie. His authenticity resonated with millions, and suddenly the phone began ringing off the hook. He became known as one of the world's most significant law of attraction experts. As such, he was invited to speak all over the world and was also invited to be on several television shows. Larry King Live, twice, The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and Nightline. Dad's stock had gone through the roof. That's awesome. Promoters worldwide were calling and wanting to speak. Colombia, China, Peru, Romania, Brazil. Everyone wanted Bob Proctor. He was ready. In fact, he'd been waiting for this. He'd been expecting. The Secret resulted from an inspired idea that Rhonda Byrne had and acted on. She accomplished exactly what she set out to accomplish. The Secret touched and changed the lives of millions of people, and it raised awareness around the idea that we all work with one infinite power and are guided by the same laws of the universe. By focusing on that movie, on the law of attraction, Rhonda raised collective consciousness around the concept that what we are thinking and holding in our mind, we are attracting. When I think of how Dad lived his life, I know he was in the frequency needed to attract everything that happened to put him across the street from the hotel in Colorado on the same weekend Rhonda Byrne's team was filming. Especially since at the age of 72, he had only been in Aspen one other time. This was not a regular stop for him. And yet, there he was. My father was always working towards bigger goals, and after already working in this industry for 45 years, there is no doubt in my mind that he had attracted this opportunity to him. He had worked his entire adult life for this. However, it was the release of the movie, The Secret, that set a new and different beginning for him. His business and his life were never the same. Finding Lasting Love, page 48. Let's check my time. I got 11 minutes left. Quote, understand that the good that you desire is already here. What you must do is get in harmony with it. And you do that with your thinking. unquote, Bob Proctor. For much of my life, I had an up and down love life. As difficult as the failures were, I knew my path was a necessary lesson. By the time I was in my 50s, I wasn't sure if a true love story was in the cards for me. I knew I couldn't do anything to change what had occurred in my past, and I did my best to harvest the good from those experiences and move forward with confidence that I was building a better life because of what I had learned. Of course, my two children, Danny and Leanne, had been have been a blessing, expanding my world in ways I could have never imagined and connecting me to a deeper feeling of pleasure, meaning, and purpose. The joy of being their father is my proof that it doesn't matter how bad some things were. I received the gift of two wonderful, beautiful children who positively impacted everything about my life. After my kids were grown and following the end of a particularly tough relationship I'd been in, I took a long break from dating. I even took a break from thinking about having a woman in my life. Taking that time gave me space to build a life in a way that forced me to consider what I truly wanted and to get clear on what's important to me. Moving forward with my plan to work on myself took a lot of self reflection and inner work that isn't always easy. First, I had to identify what I truly wanted for my life without a partner. Defining that helped me gain clarity and to set boundaries. Next, I needed to work on putting myself first, which was also challenging, but I came to know myself better through that process. I moved to Florida and chose to live in an area where I had often taken vacations. I embraced a new world, and the change was good for my soul. It wasn't always easy, but I knew I wanted a clean slate. I needed to become a better version of myself and create new habits. My old habits were not working, and it was time for me to ask myself why. I needed to come back to what I knew and begin thinking from a place of what I wanted rather than what I had been. Slowly, after a lot of self-work, I began to feel the desire to be in an honest and loving relationship again. I wanted a woman to love and appreciate, and I wanted someone who would love and appreciate me back for who I was. I deeply desired a genuinely caring, loving, and lasting partnership. In in seminars during the question and answer session, you could count on someone raising their hand and asking Dad about finding genuine and lasting love. His answer was always simple and easy to follow. He would give an exercise to take a sheet of paper and draw a circle on it. And in that circle, write my man or my woman, whichever it is that you want to attract. Next, you make it look like a starburst with many lines coming out of that circle. You write along the lines the qualities you want in a partner and relationship and be very clear. He would add that the first thing you want is for this person to be free and happy, because if they are not, you won't be either. We are all expressions of the same power and can only attract what we are in harmonious vibration with. So, this exercise helps you get clear. You do not put a face on your person. Dad would say this because if you are making this about a specific person, you are messing with their mind, and you do not have the right to do that. You also need to visualize yourself with this person as well as feel what it would be like to spend time together. You could do this by tapping into the love you feel in your heart when you are with someone or something you care about. Doing this exercise puts you in the right vibration to attract the person you are in harmony with. And being clear brings focus. It makes your choices and actions intentional. So now it was my time to put that exercise into practice and try it on for myself. First, I wrote out in detail my perfect partner. Then I created a simple Word document and put it on my desktop computer. I decided that rather than a physical description, I would write out what her personality was like, what her morals were, what she enjoyed, and so on. I wrote the things that were important to me. This also became an exercise in boundaries because it helped me clarify what was unacceptable by writing the opposite. Seeing that in writing, Seeing that in writing really helped me to define my limits. Every morning I would open the document and read it. I read it with awareness that the woman I was looking for was on her way. I found myself adding to the document regularly as ideas hit me. I put things like how she would love me and how she would treat me. I also added how I would love and treat her. I began to have fun with it and got excited with anticipation. I also deleted things that became less important as I got clearer. I got to where I looked forward to reviewing this every day because I felt that for the first time, I was getting in harmony with a higher relationship standard than that I was defining. I also started writing in my gratitude journal about how grateful I was that this woman was finding her way to me. I freely allowed everything to flow and did not force anything. I became so intimate with my graphic and list that when I went on a date, I knew immediately if this woman was sitting across from me was even close to what I was looking for. I might not have looked as closely if I had not been so aware of what I wanted. As a result, I had several first and only dates. I felt empowered rather than defeated because I knew that I was looking for and had decided never to settle again. For years at our events, I would sit next to a woman I worked with within our company. Her name was Corey, and she lived in Alaska. Clearly remember the first time I met her in 2012. It was 2014 when we were placed together at events. I realized later exactly how we ended up at our little table together. It was my father. Dad fell in love with Corey right from the start. He would say to me, "She thinks differently." It was during an event in Los Angeles that Dad decided he needed to be able to see key people from his team while he was on stage. People that he could make eye contact with and confirm that the promises he was making from stage were being noted and followed through on. In short order, Dad had orchestrated that a table would always be just to the left of the stage. It would be out of the bright lights and close enough that he could see who was sitting there. Then he decided that Corey and I would be the two people sitting there. Our table always had a third chair where Dad could sit for a break when he gave the audience an exercise. Putting us together at that table deepened my friendship with Corey. I know now that was intentional. Dad often saw what I needed before I did. It was that way for many people in his life. He would patiently wait for us to see what he already knew. Corey and I would go for walks in the morning before the seminar started and discuss what was happening in each other's lives. It was always easy and comfortable. We would see each other once every 2 months or so. We created an easy friendship and got to know each other. I was very interested in her, but wanted to avoid crossing any lines since we worked together. So, in my eyes, she was off limits. We had easy chemistry, but it didn't go any further because of work. In 2016, I was staying at my brother Ray's house in Toronto. I clearly remember driving one day and talking with a very good friend, my father's assistant, Gina Hayden. I shared with Gina how much I would love to go on a trip to Italy to celebrate my 55th birthday, but I wanted to go with someone special. At that time, I had no one special in my life. Gina suggested I call a woman we both knew and invite her. I told her that I was not interested in that person. I said there was someone else I would love to go with, but felt I couldn't. I remember exactly where I was because of Gina's response. She said, "It's Corey, isn't it?" I have no idea why she said that or how she knew, but I felt Corey. I instantly responded, "I can't because we work together." Gina convinced me that I should let Corey know how I felt. From that moment on, it was all I could think about. I knew Corey as a friend, and from what I knew of her, she certainly fit my description of my ideal partner. I have 1 minute and 26 seconds on my timer, which I'm going to stop because it is actually 12:30. I'm going to leave it there at the top of page 55 at the end of the very first paragraph, or the beginning of the very first paragraph is where we will resume on Wednesday. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here, following along with this incredibly great book that holds wisdom that if you really, really pay attention, listen, read, apply, listen, read, apply, listen, read, apply over and over. Key is repetition. Change your habits through repetition. It will change your life. I'm here to say that because I am a product of this information and I apply it every day. I study every day. I have studied every day for 4 years now. Nowhere near 60 years like Bob Proctor, but 4 years is significant to say that it's definitely changed my life. So we will see you on Wednesday, noon, same time, and we will resume our reading. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.